Let me make sure I'm live. Mike, sounding good. You know I'm out in the country. I ain't in the city, so we always got to check these things. All right, chat, get live and get ready because tonight we have a guest, Jason Goodman from Crowdsource the Truth. We're going to go through all his ads, where you can find him, where you can check out his work. And he has quite a story, but really what we're going to focus on tonight is where we're at in this investigation. So if you are new here, this is the Cartel of Truth, and I am your host, Mauler, the unapologetic apologist, the unequivocating evangelist, the poignant pundit, the uncancelable conservative. And why can't I be canceled? Well, because we're not even on YouTube like that. But apparently, according to Jason today, X is doing some funny business by shadow blocking and having fun with channels. And this is not the first time I've heard this. So we're going to find a little bit about that too. So hopefully he's has some time to go through why exactly X may be censoring some folks. We're also going to talk after this preview to get his take is diving into where we're at with Israel, the Mormon church burning, and a couple of other items to look out for. The key is that we're here to break down what's happening in the world and the politics of faith, family, and finance. And I know everybody always says, that's super loaded. Yeah, it is. But really, in the end, everything guides your beliefs. In other words, your beliefs guide everything, I should say. So your politics, indeed, in the end, will be steered, geared by what you believe about life and even the afterlife. And we can see that playing out right in front of us, from Charlie Kirk's murder to churches burning. And I'll get into the controversy. So today, I really want you to focus and pay attention to what the first guest up is going to be going through. But I'm going to break and just kick off the show by telling you something. That now the narrative is breaking. The FBI is obviously botched this case. In fact, I'll start with this. If you haven't been made aware, if you haven't been on X today and other platforms, you should know something remarkable happened today. That apparently a person who confessed to the murder, who said, I did it, at least in these beautiful text messages that painted, I guess, he had his lawyer pull up to court today and say something rather funny considering the narrative. Remember, we're told that he is suicidal. We're told that he's a guy that really needs help. And guess what? Today, his lawyer pulls up and says, listen, we want not just to go straight to trial. We want to do a preliminary hearing. We want to talk about what the evidence that's going to be presented against my client. And hey, no, everybody, there's nothing funny about that. I mean, if you're a lawyer, that's what you want. But really, we were told, no, this guy is texting, chatting through Discord. That didn't turn out to be completely true. And in every which way, he's so suicidal. Well, it doesn't look like it. Because if somebody's going to mount a defense and literally ask for lists of witnesses, and then the district attorney says, well, the list is going to be quite extensive and a bunch. And she said, yeah, well, let's get it started. That doesn't look like a person who is bowing down and saying that he did it. So I just want to let you know, if that's what you think is going to happen in this case, no. This is going to be more similar to maybe the Oklahoma City bombing, which we know then was a black box. But this judge has said that he is going to see this case and preside over it in a very how should I say, judicious, but or should I say a fair manner? But look, listen, he's going to allow this gentleman to be in the court. So get ready, because on October 30th, the killer of the alleged killer of Charlie Kirk will be in the court. Listen.
They are inherently due because they are human beings. Let me be clear. I will not put my finger on the scale of justice. These proceedings will be open to the public, conducted in accordance with the law, and handled with diligence and competence to ensure that justice is never compromised. It is the standing order of this court that Mr. Robinson shall be allowed to appear in person so he can fully engage with his attorneys and participate in these legal proceedings. Counsel, regardless of who is watching, whether it is the nation or a single individual, we must fulfill our roles with integrity, civility, and diligence. I encourage each of you to give your very best to this case.
I will say we'll give a hand to the judge because apparently he's trying to play this out in front. Let's bring up our guest here in a second, but I will say this. It's already rumors are flying whether he will indeed make it to the October 30th debut in court. Yes, people are still floating out there that this guy might be Epstein, for lack of a better term. And since we're being censored all over the place, it doesn't really matter anymore. You know, X, YouTube, all these platforms. I get a flag every single time. So without further ado, let's bring up our guest today, and we are honored to have him here again. I'll just go to a little background, and I'm going to let him tell his story about how he's contributing to this. And I think that he is one of the better, very, very strict with just looking at the evidence, particularly video. This is his claim to fame. So without further ado, Jason Goodman from Crowdsource. Crowdsource the Truth is here in the house. How are you, sir?
I am well, Mauler. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's good to have you here. I wanted to kick something off and not get too ahead of myself because I can. And the audience here is pretty direct. They like to get right into things. And I know I've seen some of your videos, but if you could give a quick brief or background, because I know you from the Butler shooting or the attempted assassination on Trump. And I remember you were the person that ID'd some things in the air, some drones flying in the air. That's how I knew you some time ago. So can you just give us, or maybe catch us up to speed as to why you're engaged in this battle for truth and sort of where you're at today?
Sure, yeah. Well, let me first give you some background on how I found that stuff in Butler, because a lot of people might be thinking, how is this guy, constantly finding drones all over the place? So first of all, my video expertise, that was my lifelong career. I was a visual effects cinematographer for many, many years before I became an independent journalist. And I've worked on major feature films like Amazing Spider-Man, X-Men, all kinds of things like that. Been doing digital imaging and photography since literally I was a kid. First version of Photoshop I ever used was 1.07. So I've been in this for like 40 years, and I've developed stereoscopic camera systems, optical systems, things that have become international standards in motion picture production for 3D movies. And over the past 8 years as an independent journalist, I have been pursued, stalked, and sued by an array of losers, social engineers, possibly FBI, DHS. I don't have direct evidence of that, but it sort of forced me to become my own attorney. And so I'm not an attorney. I've never been to law school, but I have done a lot of dabbling in district court and legal filings and things like that. So you might recall that a report was issued by the Beaver County District Attorney. They're in charge of the ESU, that's the Emergency Services Unit, the multi-county task force that was there on the ground, included SWAT team and EMTs and stuff like that. And they released that report through Senator Chuck Grassley. It was largely redacted when they released it, but I just decided, well, all right, I'd like to see it myself. So I filed a right to know request, which is sort of like the Pennsylvania equivalent of FOIA. And for people who think I'm looking over here reading a script, I've got another screen and I can screen share with you if you're interested in that. And show you
I would say take over. You go where you want. Mi casa, su casa. So if you got ability there, I'll just go ahead. If you want to put up that screen there, or
no, you can leave it like this. I'm just going to play. This is a short phone call with this guy. His name is Rafael Eduardo Castro, and I got his contact information from this police report. They must have made a mistake because the report that they sent to Senator Grassley was heavily redacted. When they fulfilled my right to know request, I got the redacted Chuck Grassley report, but they also included the original PowerPoint file that was used to make that redacted PDF. So I had all the phone numbers and names of all the federal agents and police officers who were involved. And this guy was listed on that police list as the counter UAS operator, and his phone number was on there. So let me play the phone call with him, and people can listen to this for a minute.
Perfect.
Eduardo, is that you? Can you hear me? Is that Eduardo?
Who's speaking?
It's Jason. How are you, man?
I'm sorry, it's who?
It's Jason. I wanted to ask you about the drone you were flying in Butler, Pennsylvania. Was it an Andeville counter UAS drone? And why has your name been hidden?
Oh, I'm sorry, who do you work for?
I don't work for anybody. This is Jason. I work for myself. You were the drone operator, the counter UAS drone operator, right? Is this Special Agent Eduardo Castro?
Who do you work for? And how did you get this number?
Eduardo Castro? I don't work for anyone. I have a show called Crowdsource the Truth. You were the drone operator during the Donald Trump assassination attempt, right? What was the function of the drone you were flying?
Sir, there's a government phone number for official business only. Do not call this number again.
Wow.
You didn't sound too happy to hear from me, right?
Wow, Chad, if you guys know why I'm looking the way I am, literally, Jason, I didn't know any of this stuff. And now I can see, man, to make a call like that, Jason's not only about the business, but I'm assuming if we do this, and I don't know where you're at, but we're not making money doing this. So Jason to get on the phone and find the truth and to do that is that's a cold call, bro. And that guy sounded way nervous. Like, who are you? And he kept asking. If you would have dropped a 3-letter like agency name, I don't even know that would have helped. He would have said, like, wait a minute. You know.
Well, I think that would have been illegal, so I would definitely not do that. I'm not into tricking the guy. I told him exactly what was up. But anyway, that was before there was any public admission of drones, and I think that might have changed the direction of at least the lying to Congress. So, after we knew there was a counter UAS operator there, I went through a lot of the videos. I had been putting together a project on Butler that I called GigaSync, which was I took the main broadcast from Right Side Broadcasting and I synced up all the police body cameras and the eyewitness cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And it allowed me to identify certain specific events. I don't know if you remember, but in Butler, CBS News and a couple of different outlets had reported that Donald Trump was shot at 6:11 and 33 seconds. And I said to myself, wait a minute, what is this, a horse race or the Indy 500, 6:11 and 33 seconds? Do you know when JFK was shot? I mean, we always hear it's November 22nd. Was it 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? They never tell you. And here they're down to the second. It just struck me as bizarrely precise. So that's when I started this GigaSync project. And again, this is where my background in broadcast and motion picture production came in, because as you might know, anybody who's in broadcast is going to be using time code on their broadcast, and that is something called SMPTE time code, the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. So I went to the Right Side Broadcasting YouTube feed, which is about a 6-hour high definition broadcast of the whole entire day. And they've got a little time of day burn in so that everybody watching knows what time of day it is. And I just went to 5:59 p.m. to the very last frame where 5:59 switched over to 6 p.m. I laid down my SMPTE time code on there, and now I had time code for the whole entire day. Then I synced up every video that had a recording of the gunshots. And so now they were all in sync. Wow. They all had time code overlaid. And this was really important for the eyewitness cell phone videos that do not have SMPTE time code, right, and particularly for the police body camera videos. And what we discovered was that there was one police officer who wasn't supposed to be there. He was just driving by and there was a call on the radio, and he drives up and he runs up to the building. I mean, this guy was really heroic. But at exactly 6:11 and 33 seconds, his body camera picked up a laser, some sort of infrared beam inside the first floor window of the building that the kid was shooting from. And it had a duration of 6 video frames, which is 1/5 of a second. It's a very long time for something like that, because it eliminates the possibility that it's some sort of an error on the video or something like that. And there's another important factor, because a lot of people were saying, oh, that's just a reflection of headlights. But it wasn't, because there were other windows that had headlights reflecting. And this is a little complicated, but people are going to understand it when I explain it. When you're driving, let's say you're riding as a passenger in a car and you're looking out the window on the highway, Everybody has noticed that that little fence on the highway is zipping by really fast as the bushes seem to be going a little bit less fast. The mountains are barely moving and the moon is stationary. That
Right.
phenomenon is called motion parallax, and it's one of the ways that we discern depth. It's just a natural optical phenomenon. So when this police officer whose body cam records the laser in the window, when he runs by one set of windows, we do see headlights reflecting. And as you would expect, as the guy runs past the window, the headlights move across the window because the car that they're reflecting is far away. And there's a lot of motion parallax on the reflection. But this dot stays absolutely stationary for 6 video frames, even though the guy is running.
Running.
And that's because the dot is coming from a laser being pressed right against the window, and it's in the exact same 3-dimensional plane as the window itself. There is no motion parallax on the dot. That's how you know it's somebody inside the room. So this is the type of investigating that I'm doing. I'm going through videos and I'm using, the clues that are hidden in these technological mediums that we all look at every day, and leveraging my knowledge that previously was used for doing visual effects and making movies look realistic and cool. I can now discern various things in some of these videos that the average person might not notice. So let's flash forward here to this Charlie Kirk assassination, because we've seen a lot of people who have been doing analysis of digital videos. And people are really surprised. There was thousands of 20-year-old college students at this thing, and we've seen maybe, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen high quality videos. I think most people expect that we would be seeing a lot more things recorded on people's cell phones and stuff like that, but we really haven't. And there's a couple of factors there. I did a video about 2 weeks ago with John Cullen, who people may have heard of, where we were talking about this.
We did a review on it a little bit. I don't know if it was the first or the second live. So just tell me about this, because I've been told, Jason, just on the same path, that you're so pretty strict with the evidence and you don't have a lot of time to waste, that if somebody's on the wrong path, you might, even if you're doing a co-stream with them, you'll be pretty clear. Hey, I don't think that your story or the evidence that you're, at least presenting has legs, and you're pretty direct. So where I want to get to that in a second, but show the video. And I have a question when it comes to where you're at with you and the gentleman here who apparently is the sound guy. You're not the sound guy. You're more the video guy, right?
Well, I wouldn't say he's a sound guy, but he is very skilled in math, and he's using sound analysis, acoustic analysis. He also is very knowledgeable about guns and firearms. I know nothing about that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I've gone shooting maybe 3 or 4 times in my life, and he's very familiar with different types of guns, and he's been using acoustic analysis to triangulate the location, this type of thing called crack thump, where you can calculate the location of a gunshot by measuring the differential between the explosion of the gunpowder that launches the projectile and the sound of the projectile breaking the sound barrier.
Yeah.
So my understanding of that process is that you have multiple recordings of the same gunshot, and you can compare those things. If you know where they were recorded on a map, you do all kinds of math and measuring, and you can triangulate and locate the gunshots. And it's not like he invented that. That is a tried and true method. It's very well known. But I can't really criticize that type of analysis, because
I'm listening just like you. So I cut you off though. You were going to pull up a video here with him. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, this is a pretty lengthy video, so I don't want to run through the whole thing, but this thumbnail tells us what we need to know. There were people who were putting out information that this particular jet had been located on FAA radar. When a jet flies around, it's got to use a transponder so that it appears on radar and so that other jets don't crash into it. And so even if it's a military jet, even if it's on potentially a classified mission, it pretty much has to always be broadcasting this public radio signal that is the ADS-B signal of the radio transmitter, the transponder that tells you where it is. And in fact, really heavy-duty aviation enthusiasts can get some certain kind of antenna or satellite or something that can pick these up. And people have created these groups where, if you have a satellite where you are and I have one where I am, we can kind of pool our data, and you can kind of like check that the FAA is being honest.
Honest about where they're at. Mhm.
Right. I mean, the point is it's like publicly known information that's sort of open source that people can check. So it becomes this very, very strong kind of evidence. And the fact is, this jet was flying right over the university, just like 2 miles or 6 miles away, very, very close, doing slow circles over Utah Lake, which is just so unusual, because why was it doing that? We can look at how this jet flies every day, basically, and it's done flights over Utah before. This is the only one where it slows down almost to its stall speed, basically the slowest speed it can fly and remain in the air. And it goes way, way down, something like 200 feet off the ground. And we don't really know exactly what it's doing, but this behavior is so unusual.
Very odd.
It's very suspicious. And what we do know about it is this thing is part of the Army's Hades program. And I mean, we all know what Hades is. It's a name for hell. But in this case, it stands for the High Accuracy Detection and Exploitation System. And right now, this is one of 2 jets. This article is from 2024. The Army is developing this program, and its purpose is to conduct what's called ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And, high accuracy detection, that makes a lot of sense. We're going to detect threats. We're going to detect enemies, whatever it is we're detecting. We're doing it with high accuracy. And an exploit is some sort of electronic warfare, generally interference with enemy communications or enemy systems. So most of the specific capabilities of this thing are not publicly known or perhaps even classified, but just from the name and from the things that they tell us, publicly that it's capable of doing. This is a jet that's flying around. It's got a lot of radio communications technology on it, satellite technology, computer technology, who knows what. And there are other articles that tell us that the Army is attempting to launch and recover drones from this type of jet. So that takes me back to our videos where I, when this all happened to Charlie Kirk, I was obviously very concerned. And the first thing I did was I said, well, let me find some video from the event. And I was looking around the usual places, YouTube and X and whatever. And I found this individual who is Adam Bartholomew. He is just a dad who has a kid who goes to the college, and he is, a hobbyist live streamer. It looks like my internet isn't cooperating right now, but I'll continue to give you the background on him while we wait for it to
You're
load.
still coming through okay, it looks like. I just think
Oh, there we go. Here he is. So let's just listen to this for a second. I'll give you a little background. What happened was I observed that Adam on his Life is Driving YouTube channel had 2 versions of this video from the campus. One of them was only 27 minutes long, and the other was an hour and 7 minutes long. And I noticed that in the 27-minute long video, it sort of unexpectedly cut out. And when I downloaded the hour and 7-minute video, I observed that coincidentally, it cut out 1 second before Charlie Kirk was shot.
What, 1 second?
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I remember you were talking about some cutout, but 1 second before the shot is fired.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And he's walking around for 19 minutes or so before that without any disruption. He's really a clever guy. He's developed this system that allows him to aggregate multiple 5G cellular connections so that he has a very reliable connection to the internet. And so it just struck me as a little too coincidental to be coincidental. Let's listen to him for just a second. You've got this very sophisticated system that is designed essentially for professional live streaming. This little camera has its own memory in it that you record to,
Yeah.
an SD card. And then
Correct, yeah.
normally it is wirelessly transmitting from Wi-Fi to your iPad. And the iPad is recording and then also broadcasting to YouTube. And the highest quality recording is normally in the camera itself, with a sort of a mid-level quality on this local wireless transmission to the iPad, and the lowest quality on YouTube. And that's what we saw with the YouTube video cutting out and all of that. But you told me, and this was an excellent instinct on your part, you're right. I think this overcrowding of the local wireless network, wherever you are, when there's thousands of people using cell phones, is harming this camera's ability to transmit to your iPad and could even disrupt that. So you told me what you did for the first time was you connected the camera to the iPad by a network wire. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So I had I have this in my backpack, and this is 2 battery packs, an Ethernet switcher, and my Verizon hotspot, and then my tablet has AT&T, and my phone has AT&T. So I have the 3 signals merged together with Speedify.
Right.
But coming off of this Ethernet switcher was 2 Ethernet cables coming directly out of my backpack.
Wow.
So I'm carrying all this weight that it used to be hanging off the tripod. Now I'm carrying it out of my bag. So, and then I'm holding the camera, tablet in my right hand, and the tablet, the camera tripod in my right hand, and the tablet in my left hand. And coming out of my bag is the 2 Ethernet cables. My kid said I look like I'm wearing a Ghostbuster pack.
That's cool, though. But let me ask you this: is the Mevo camera hardwired to the iPad through the Ethernet router?
Yes. So I use an Ethernet adapter that allows me to hardwire.
That's the only reason we saw your video. Do you realize that? That was a stroke of genius by you, Adam.
You think so?
I know so. So this is how we got to see his video, because in the live stream it cut out. But what he just explained to us, he's got this triple redundant wireless system. And even with that, it cut out. The only reason we got this video is that he was also recording over the wire to hardwired the iPad. Right.
Wow.
And so we've got this jet flying around that tells us it's a high accuracy detection and exploitation system. And I think it, with a high degree of accuracy, it detected, hey, there's somebody making an unauthorized broadcast here, and it launched an exploit that shut down his broadcast, because I had experienced something very similar in New York City only 2 weeks prior, and it caused me to go look this up. This is an IT security company that I didn't know anything about until I was subject to this exploit, but this is a company called Oligo, which in April, they published a report about a 0-day exploit in Apple's Bluetooth stack that they've called Airborne. And what this tells us is that a wormable 0-click remote code execution exploit can be launched at your phone if you have an iOS device using Bluetooth. You don't have to go to a website. You don't have to click on any kind of phishing email. Somebody could just walk up to you and launch one of these. Yeah, zap your phone. And the thing that's really dangerous about it, because these types of, they've had IMSI catchers and all kinds of signal disruption tools kind of for a long, long time. But the point is, this is really problematic because it doesn't require a van or some kind of big battery pack or big radio transmitter. It's using Bluetooth low energy, which is the protocol that's in those tiny little Apple, what are those discs called? The AirTags. And so it's a very, very low power radio signal that something small like a drone or a cell phone can launch this attack at you. And it's not really taking over the radio signal in a traditional sense, but it's flooding the phone with Bluetooth requests and disrupting it in all kinds of different ways. And it caused Adam Bartholomew's live stream to cut out from broadcasting to YouTube 1 second before Charlie Kirk was shot. And there's something else that it did. And when I explained all this to him for the first time, I didn't know this guy. I just contacted him cold, like you did me just for this interview. And when I explained all this to him, he said to me, remember, this is not a guy doing a YouTube channel about government conspiracies. This is just a dad who's a hobbyist live streamer and
crazy with all the equipment, the setup.
Super into tech. Right. When I explained this all to him, he said, well, you know, I don't want to be conspiratorial or, you know, put fuel on the fire, but I've been using this system for about 2 years and I use it all the time. And what he normally does is after the live stream, he takes the memory out of the camera and he does like a higher quality edited version from the memory in the camera. And he said for the first time ever, nothing was recorded to the memory on the camera. So I think drones were launched from that jet and did a Bluetooth low energy airborne exploit on his iOS devices and prevented him from broadcasting or from recording the Charlie Kirk assassination, because that is what that thing does. It's there to disrupt enemy communications. And what he was doing was essentially an unauthorized broadcast. These guys who, if we agree that we were looking at a sophisticated conspiracy to murder Charlie Kirk, they wanted to control all of the outgoing media. So this explains how he was there for 19 minutes live streaming. Everything was working totally fine. Then 1 second before Charlie was shot, we see these flying objects in the air. He's talking to these guys, and this is where it normally cuts out. But what I did was I went to his original file, not even the one that he put on YouTube. I asked him, can you send me, Adam, the original file that you recorded on your iPad, which is 8 times more data than what was broadcast over YouTube. You know, video compression, you got to shrink down the file and you lose a lot of data. But because I was using his original file, I was able to zoom in on each of these objects and we can see this one's a bird. I was able to go through the whole video and determine what in this video is a bird, what in this video is a flying insect. Here, look at that. You can see, it's amazing, the resolution. Segmented body, wings flapping. That's a wasp or something flying around, not a drone.
Not a drone, yeah.
But then later in the video, we're going to see objects that do not behave like birds or drones. I think even a non-expert can look at that and know that it's a biological object flying around. The body is wiggling. It's got a very uneven, organic sort of flight path as it ambles across the frame rather slowly. And now the shooting just occurred. So I'm not an ornithologist. I don't know that much about birds, but usually when guns get fired, birds fly away.
They go away.
Right. And throughout this video, we can see there's a lot of birds flying in the background. This is not a bird. This is flying in a perfectly orbital path. Now, I realize it looks like it might be flapping its wings, but it's very small in the sky, and it's a fairly low resolution image of it. We're seeing artifacts around it, but I do not believe that's a bird. It flies right over the crowd in one orbital move. I think it's a high-speed camera on a drone doing reconnaissance, taking pictures, sending them back to that jet where it will be analyzed. If there's a high-speed camera in there, quite a lot of data could have just been captured flying over the crowd. Then we have this thing show up. It's a little hard to tell what it is, but it's emitting smoke. I don't know if you can see that.
I can see that.
I've never seen a bird emit smoke. I think it's either a lithium polymer powered drone that's about to catch on fire. Its batteries are overheating. Or it's a hybrid electric gasoline drone that's burning gasoline. And look at this other thing flying by as this thing is up there.
Yeah, that one right there. Crazy.
Really looks like a drone. So it's like we've got this drone swarm that's doing reconnaissance over the site after Charlie Kirk has been shot. It did this exploit to take out unauthorized recordings because they don't want to be seen. Here's another one. Look at this thing. People say, oh, it's a bird. Birds can dive with their wings folded back, but this thing is moving up at a tremendous rate of speed. It's only visible on screen there for 3 video frames, which is a fraction of a second. It seems like some sort of propelled device.
Now, here's the question that I know everybody throws out, and you probably already heard this. I haven't seen any, and of course, this is crazy because we're getting, it seems like a blackout of evidence. We don't have all the cameras from the campus. But is it safe to say that nobody has reported ever seeing a drone? We don't have an eyewitness going, yeah, I saw drones flying all over the place. Is that problematic when you come to this? Because it sounds like Butler, they didn't see the drones that you caught as well, right?
Well, for Butler, I can't say that I definitely have drones on video. My information that there were drones in Butler was based on the fact that I got a report from the police that said there was a drone operator. And when I asked him what he was doing with drones, as you said, he certainly behaved in a manner that causes me to believe there was something he didn't want to be forthcoming about. So perhaps there were drones. I definitely saw a laser in the window, and I just don't know what these drones do or what their capabilities are. The laser in the window could be used for a lot of different things. There are people now who are saying, oh, drones were shooting at Charlie Kirk. I don't see any evidence of that. And frankly, when I look around the internet and in the real world, I have a lot of experience with drones from my days as a visual effects cinematographer who did a lot of aerial cinematography. And I've even built drones and worked on putting heavy cameras, stereoscopic cameras in the air. We flew a stereoscopic camera for IMAX. There's a Panama Canal movie that I had the only UAV flyable 3D camera that was suitable for IMAX when we made this film in 2013 or 14, whenever it was. So I know a lot about the capabilities and limitations of drones. Now, granted, that was 10 years ago, but the limitations that I'm talking about are limitations of physics. Okay. Definitely the battery power is better. Airplane, aircraft, drone aircraft designs are better. There's toroidal propellers now and all kinds of incremental improvements to the technology, but you can't overcome physics. And the notion that a gun is going to fly somewhere and shoot with any degree of accuracy, like a sniper shot right in the guy's neck, and not be detected and fly on one of these drones that's going super fast. I just don't believe it. The things that we just saw in those images right there, to your question of how did nobody see them? Well, I mean, first of all, I haven't proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that those are drones. I'm presenting evidence that causes me to believe that they're drones, and there certainly is a lot of it. And when I look at the way that various elements, let's call it, on the internet have reacted to my reporting, I think, just like our buddy Rafael Eduardo Castro was very nervous on the phone, it's certainly not proof that he had a drone, but it's certainly evidence that he didn't want to talk about it. So when I've done all this reporting on X, as you mentioned earlier, as of yesterday morning, every single thing I post says we've put a warning on this because it might have sensitive content. Now, there is no sensitive content in that. I've retweeted our video. Oh, look, it didn't say sensitive content to this. Maybe it will when we're done. But almost everything that...
Flag it, huh? I saw that. Okay.
Yeah. Almost everything that I've been posting, they've been saying sensitive content, sometimes even within seconds of it being posted. This was just audio. This is an X space. So what's sensitive about the content? I mean, I'm just analyzing videos in that. And it's just very strange. It leads me to believe that there's something about this that they don't want people talking about on X, because I see people posting about exploding DJI microphones,
all over
ballistic drones. That goes everywhere. But me posting this very, very specific evidence about the Army's ISR jet, that goes nowhere. Secondarily, we've seen people who I allege are social engineers, namely this guy, Blake Bednarz.
Yeah, I saw this. Go through this, because I saw your exchange and your claims again. So you think he's phony because of how he's explaining he got some of this evidence and information. So you think this is a misinformation that's trying to cloud real leads here. Is that what you think this guy's about?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that for a number of reasons, I believe I can prove it with at least one. And again, when I make these allegations, these people are free to come forward and disprove what I'm saying. But in that video on Redacted with Natalie and Clayton, Blake basically says that he found drones all over Adam's video. So what was interesting about it is, as I just told you, I saw Adam's video on YouTube hour or two after Charlie Kirk was murdered. I contacted Adam, I think that night or the next day, asked him all these questions about the exploit, about the video getting cut off, and he was intrigued by what I was saying. So when I asked him if he could provide the original video, he said he would. And because it was so big, the original video was 8 gigabytes. We had to go through a little bit of back and forth for him to transmit it to me. He's not in the regular business of emailing 8 gigabyte files to people. So I was pretty confident that I was the first person that he had sent it to, because I had given him some advice about how to send it, and then got it like, a day or two later, whatever it was. So then I went through, because people were telling me, viewers of Crowdsource the Truth were telling me, hey, people are seeing things in the Adam Bartholomew video on Life is Driving YouTube channel that they think are drones. And because viewers of Crowdsource the Truth knew that I had identified the suspected drones in Butler, PA, people were telling me about this. So then I started looking through Adam's video, and my mind was going to, I bet a drone shut down his broadcast, because like I said, there was an operative who did that to me in New York City when I was getting into some beef with the NYPD. And I was very confident, for a number of reasons we can talk about in a future show, that this kid working for the NYPD had launched this Bluetooth airborne attack. That's how I found out about it. So I started investigating around the moments where Adam's broadcast was disrupted. And that's where I found all those things emitting smoke, shooting up. And to me, I was like, well, those don't look like birds or insects. Those have got to be drones. So then after that, this moron appears, and he starts saying that he contacted Adam Bartholomew and that he found all these drones in his video, and it's kind of freaky how he identified them because he used AI. I mean, even without sound, just look at this guy. He's looking around. He's shifty-eyed. He's Natalie and Clayton look kind of skeptical as he's talking, and he's just absolutely lying. And the reason I say he's lying is not because I'm just analyzing his body language and using my discernment to say that he looks dishonest. He's made a specific claim. He said he used ChatGPT to identify high contrast dots in the sky, and that it was easy to do because it was a clear blue sky and he was looking for black dots. So I said, okay, in addition to all this stuff that I do with video, I'm actually quite well versed with artificial intelligence as well. And I tried a couple of different methods to recreate what Blake claimed that he had done. I first said, okay, here's a YouTube link. Search through this video on YouTube, ChatGPT, and tell me if you can identify high contrast dots in the sky. I did this with ChatGPT. I did this with Google Gemini, and I did it with Grok. And I have the paid account on both Grok and ChatGPT. So you can load in more stuff and get more questions and all the kind of professional stuff you can do with it. And each of those tools that I just named, none of them are able to process video like that.
Yeah, I use it all the time, and I'm like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Yeah.
Right. So then people said, oh no, ChatGPT, it works differently for different people. You got to try different things. I know very well how ChatGPT works. I tried loading in the video and it said, no, you can't load anything bigger than I think 20 or 25 megabytes. This file was 1.07 gigabytes when you download it from YouTube, and the YouTube version was not sufficient for identifying these details. I used a 7.9 gigabyte file. I cleaned the screen on my laptop. I cleaned my glasses with lens cleaner. I turned off all the lights in the apartment. I sat down on the couch. I went through the thing, 200% blow up on the video, frame by frame, looking for these things. Then I found them. And as you saw there, I blew them up 800%, 1200%, and then you could see them. But this notion that he just put ChatGPT on it, I do not believe. So then in an X space, I had a chance to speak with this guy briefly. And he said, I loaded in individual frames. And I suspected he might say that, but that's also a lie, because ChatGPT, out of all of those tools, has the largest capacity. It lets you load 10 files at a time. Grok only lets you do 2, and Gemini, I think, is also limited to 1 or 2 at a time. But the point is, in my work in visual effects, there have been a lot of times that we've had to render effects shots and take in recorded digital video files and segment them out into frames to put them out over a network to do distributed rendering of visual effects and 3D animation and things like that. So this concept of converting video or feature films into frames to process it is something I'm very familiar with. And while it's not impossible to do, it's not something that a person who is an insurance agent, this guy claims to own an insurance agency, and he's got a bunch of good computers, according to him. But I just do not believe that he processed a 1 hour and 7-minute video into 124,000 video frames on his desktop computer, fed them 10 at a time into ChatGPT, had them identify these things, then correlate these 10 segment at a time frame groups back into 30 frame per second video, back to a timeline that gave him this whole detailed list that said, okay, the first drone appears at 13 minutes and 40 seconds. The next one is at 19 minutes and 12 seconds. Because he did that. He provided a list of all these timestamps. Yeah. And I went through and I checked every single one of the things that he said were drones. And each and every one of them were birds, insects, not drones. The only drones that were identified were those ones that I just showed you. Right. So from all this evidence, I surmise, and I haven't proven this, but I'm explaining everybody my process. I surmise that this guy is a liar, and I suspect that his purpose was to produce a report that says, oh, there's 30 drones, and then at some point after that, some other expert would come forward and say, oh no, here's the first 26 things, they're birds and insects. And then they forget to tell you about the last 3. And the people who hear that report are left with the impression that the drones have been debunked. There were no drones.
Yeah, it discredits the evidence that you've provided that, like I said, clearly I could see, wasn't seeing drones everywhere. But when you started to, and especially from the video that he was showing. So then, now that we've gotten to this place, I don't think there's anybody here from your audience or my audience that believes that you're not qualified to investigate, especially the video side. But I want to do this before you actually show us the frames that you're at now. So are you telling me that you think it's first of all, the narrative that there was a shooter? You're not saying that a bullet wasn't fired from the location that even the FBI says the rooftop. You're still in the mode that possibly did happen, but that's not the kill shot. Am I kind of where you're at now?
Close. Okay. I would say that I haven't done sufficient independent research to tell you where the actual rifle shot was fired from, but I am convinced that a rifle shot was fired, but it was never intended to hit Charlie Kirk. It probably was fired from the rooftop, they tell us, or very close by. Again, that's where I would rely on the people doing these crack thump calculations to tell us where that was. And it's plus or minus however many feet, because we don't know exactly where the recording devices that pick this sound up were. We don't know all the parameters of the microphones and things like that, but approximately those guys are able to locate the shot. Now, this is where I go to just my own logical thinking and kind of acting like a detective trying to figure out how a deception like this would work. And the reason for the rifle shot, I believe, is first of all, to distract the crowd. Second of all, they know that we exist. In 1963, November 22nd, when JFK was killed, you didn't have the Mauler and Jason doing their own high definition real-time broadcasts. You had NBC, ABC, CBS. And as long as you could control those broadcasts in the same way that I allege they're trying to control the video information coming out of the site, as long as you can control the video information and make sure information that you don't like doesn't get out, then you're okay. But now, someone planning this, whether it's the FBI, the CIA, the Mossad, whoever it is that we think did this, whoever it is, they know that there's lots of people like us. There's lots of people with sophisticated equipment that can analyze audio waveforms and down to milliseconds tell you where a shot came from. So we would be foolish to presume that they aren't going to come up with some sort of a scheme to try to trick that. So that's when I start thinking creatively. And I said to myself, well, if I wanted to do that, what would I do? And I'd
Right.
say, okay, I'd put a guy on the roof with the rifle, but it would be important that they be perfectly timed so that if two rifles were going to fire, or if a rifle and an air gun were going to fire, you'd want the firing to be perfectly timed. So I said to myself, is there a commercial device that can do that? And sure enough, there's a company that makes generation 2 of the digital trigger. And again, I am not a gun expert, but it's telling us that this is something that works with a standard AR grip. So, it's a certain type of trigger for a certain type of gun. And I've watched a bunch of videos from the guy who invented this thing. And the way it works is you like take apart your gun and replace certain standard parts with this. And then inside of this, he's got a digital component that's battery powered, and you can program it to do different things. It's got like USB or whatever, how you program a digital device, and you can set it. So for sniper shooting, there's one way to program it. For if you want to pull the trigger once and have it fire twice, there's another way to program it.
Wow.
If he goes into this whole thing where he says, you got to check the laws in the state that you're in. Don't program it to do crazy firing, but obviously it's a very capable device. And again, from my work in stereoscopic 3D and in cinema, we've had a lot of times where we've had to do visual effect shots that require very precise synchronization of lights going off and cameras starting and different kinds of things that need to be precisely synchronized. And this is exactly the type of device that you would seek out to synchronize devices. Because even though I don't know about guns, I know that if you can trigger a device with a digital signal, you can synchronize two digital signals to trigger two devices simultaneously. So I think the drones were flying around, creating a secure radio communications network for devices like this and operatives on the ground, while other drones in the swarm were identifying and exploiting enemy communications, unauthorized broadcasts.
So basically,
and I think
securing a perimeter. That's what they were doing. So nothing's interfering with this activity, particularly at this time. And then what do we see? We see basically a blockade, or that happened in the gentleman's video that just cuts a second. Before. I have no idea it was 1 second. That's crazy. So,
and you asked, how could they go undetected? Well, I mean, again, it's a sophisticated operation. Obviously, everybody's heard drones in operation. They're very loud, but sound only travels so far. And if these are small drones, if they're at very high altitude, and if they're designed to operate in a stealthy manner, there's going to be a certain altitude that they can operate at where you're not going to hear it, particularly not if you're on the ground and there's a lot of ambient noise from a crowd and Charlie Kirk is talking and people are rumbling around. So the drone could be very, very high up, using a very high resolution camera with a very long telephoto lens, and say, okay, there's the guy. And send whatever kind of signal they send, however far that can travel. I don't know. Maybe it comes down low, goes to a certain angle, does whatever. But then when the chaos ensues and everybody's running around, I mean, when you're running for your life because you think you might get shot in any second and everybody is screaming, the swarm can move in and operate much more closely without being detected, because nobody's looking up and paying attention and nobody can hear the buzzing over whatever might be going on. So again, it's a very coordinated operation, it would appear.
Well, let me say this, because I've heard this sort of, I'll call it, we'll just say it for just to borrow from Trump, low IQ, like sort of pushback. And they say, but you realize the timing that it has to be perfect to get a shot and another shot. And you literally just, it's a device that is readily available that's now possible. So I scratch my head sometimes when people say this, when this is easy for us to look up, to be able to figure out this technology exists. So now stop saying that it's impossible for them to time something, because it's totally possible. All right, let's do this, Jesse, because I really want to get into the frame where you're at, where now you're showing you got it down to lock to a frame. I want you to tell us where you're at with that footage. The screen is yours to show us where you think this is coming from, because we really want to see this analysis. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is the latest analysis that I've come to, and I did a live stream today that went into really extensive detail of how I came about all of this. And there's another guy who I recently met who I've been working with named Zeb Boykin who is a U.S. Marine and also a skilled video artist. He doesn't have my background in video, but he does bridge an important gap where he's got military experience and ballistic knowledge and some video knowledge as well. So he's, I think, a valuable resource and a smart guy. And he was going viral with his ballistic analysis, and somebody who he doesn't know sent him this video that I've gotten these frames from. And when he got it, I said, wow, that really looks like a very, very high resolution video. So this is another thing I forgot to mention. I am noticing so many people who are just, grabbing any video they can get and, saying, oh, I'm going to do an optical flow analysis on some TikTok video that's been screen captured and copied from somebody's phone. And it's just sort of like the most terrible looking video you could ever imagine.
Right.
And it's a ridiculous thing to do because the quality is insufficient to make any kind of determination about it. So Zeb got this video, and this, I saw it immediately and I said, wow, that's pretty high bit rate. That really looks like maybe the original video. I could tell it was full resolution. And, I started communicating with him and he said, yeah, I don't know who sent me this video. It was just some anonymous person. And, oh, you know what, let me stop it before we see Charlie get shot and get banned from everywhere. But the point is, it was a very high resolution video. And I said, Zeb, can you send it to me? Just like I did with Adam Bartholomew. I always want to go to the original video because it's extremely important from a forensic analysis standpoint. And that's where you're getting the closest to true imagery. I mean, even in the original file, there's going to be video compression artifacts and certain limitations of the camera. But every time you upload it to TikTok and somebody downloads it and puts their little, logo on it and uploads it somewhere else and downloads it somewhere else and captures it on their phone, the quality is getting reduced and the details are being lost, and you can really no longer determine what's going on in that video. So I got this video from Zeb, and just after a little bit of analysis, I noticed that something was wrong with it. And it was only 20 frames per second. And I said to myself, 20 frames per second, that's such a weird frame rate. Like you can't even realistically set the phone to 20 frames per second. It's just not an option that I'm aware of on any standard iPhone or anything like that. Okay. And I said to myself, well, that's weird. So we started talking about that on live streams. And then oddly, somebody sent him a 30 frame per second version of the same video. And I won't show it again because it's essentially the same, but you can see, if people can see closely enough, this properties window should show us, it says 29.97 frames per second. I found that very suspicious as well, because I said, well, wait a minute, how do we have a 20 frame per second video and a 30 frame per second video? Normally, when you change the frame rate of something to a new frame rate that doesn't evenly, it's got to be evenly divisible, or you get very unusual motion that is instantly detectable to my eye. And I didn't detect that in either of these videos. So I said to myself, well, this must have been, both of these had to be derived from a video whose frame rate is divisible by 20 and 30. So it must be either a 60 frame per second original, a 120 frame per second original, or a 240 frame per second original. And then I began to think it must be 240 frame per second, because when we analyzed it further, this is now a composite image that I've created in Photoshop, where I've taken 3 frames from the video, and I haven't moved this dot. I just put it exactly where it is, and we have 3 positions of this dot that moves right towards Charlie Kirk. The next frame in this video, his shirt collar is stretched out to here, and he's been hit by the bullet, and he's about to be dead. And to me, that was quite clearly a bullet coming right at him. And the reason why I have these arrows here and this ruler is because what this shows us is that each of these dots are nearly equidistant from one another. And this is how I arrived at the 240 frame per second determination, because I asked ChatGPT, if a projectile were moving 500 feet per second and photographed with a camera at 240 frames per second, how far would it move in every 1/240th of a second? And the answer was 2.08 feet. Now, I don't have a reliable way of measuring something in midair here, but we know that Charlie Kirk was 6'4" and he's seated. So perhaps we're seeing about 3 feet worth of his body right here. And
Yep.
when I compare his height to the distance between these bullets, it sure looks close enough to 2 feet that I seem to be somewhere in the neighborhood. It's moving at a constant speed and being photographed at a high frame rate. And I think that that's what we're seeing. It's curious to note that this is regarded as the most powerful air pistol in the world right now. This shoots projectiles at 500 feet per second. And if it was shot at somebody from close range, it certainly looks like it could be lethal to me.
Right.
So if you were able to replace the trigger on a device like that with that digital trigger, such that pulling the trigger on this fires the rifle, or pulling the trigger on the rifle fires this, and we've got our operators in radio communication with our secure ISR drone network, and we've got these guys doing their hand signals or whatever they're doing behind Charlie Kirk.
Right.
It seems to me that something's going on back there, and it looks very much, from where I sit, like Charlie Kirk was shot in the back of the head with a low muzzle velocity projectile that penetrated just below the base of his skull, was deflected downward about 19 degrees, severed or severely damaged his spinal cord, and popped out the front of his neck. Then it got caught in his shirt, stretched out the collar, and it had lost so much of its relatively low kinetic energy. This is not a rifle round that comes through and explodes his head. It's a relatively low amount of kinetic energy compared to a rifle. But by the time it's penetrated the tendons and muscles in his neck and popped out the front, it has almost no kinetic energy left. It's caught in the shirt collar, stretches out, and the shirt relaxes and it falls down the front of his shirt.
Now, where are you at in terms of who is looking at your analysis? Who has said this is, and I'm saying not names, but are you getting support on this, or are you getting pushback by saying, well, where the heck was the guy at? Who did it? Because I'll say this, from what you're explaining to me now, we have a sort of kind of a big issue according to your view, and that is the canopy behind him. Now it looks like it's coming down from an angle, and I've also noticed that you posted something, and I don't know if you want to get to it, but if it's coming down from an angle, it would be coming from what we call that underpass. It almost looks like a bridge, but it's basically holding that skywalkway that's above it, or whatever it is. We're gonna get to that in a second, but tell me that. What are the challenges to your view now? What are people saying? Hey, Jason, you're crazy, because is it really to come down to the video analysis, or are people pushing back because of the angle of where the shooter would need to be to get that shot off?
Most of the people who are pushing back, well, first of all, we know what Elon Musk and X
already
think. It's sensitive and they don't want people looking at it. Now, there's another complication here, because when people first noticed this, everybody saw this dot. And then in the next frame, this dot is gone. And Charlie is leaning forward, his shirt is stretching out, and we also see this dot. So people said, well, that can't be a bullet because it's moving away from it. And I said, no, that's incorrect. Because again, you have to understand what we're looking at. This is an MPEG compressed digital video. And digital video compression works with this intra-frame compression, where it's looking at what's changing in the image from one frame to the next. And like right now, you're sitting in your office, the camera's on a tripod, the wall is completely stationary. And so every time you move your head, the video compressor says, okay, leave the wall the same, leave the background the same, just update this small section of pixels where Mauler's head is. And now we only have to store a small amount of video data. The rest of this can all stay the same. And that's the way the video compressor works. So when something moves through the frame very quickly, and it's high contrast, see, this is almost white against this guy's almost black hair. And then here we have a dark gray wall and another white thing. And then here we have it over a dark background and it's white again. So these sort of high contrast, fast moving, small details confuse the temporal compression of the MPEG compressor and sometimes get displayed out of order. And that's what's happening. The point is, it had to be photographed here or we wouldn't have that there. And I mean, saying that for one dot is like, oh yeah, how do you know? Could
Right.
just be a mistake. When the second dot was located, and I said, well, wait a minute, these things are right in line with what looks like the trajectory to his head. Then it started to become a lot more difficult to say that it was a mistake. Now, remember, I told you we had one version of the video that was at 20 frames per
Right.
second and one version that was at 30 frames per second. So this goes back to my deduction that it was a 240 frame per second video, because to derive a 20 frame per second video from a 240 frame per second video, you're taking 1 out of every 12 frames.
Right. 12. Uh-huh.
To get the 30 frame per second video, you're taking 1 out of every 8 frames. So the videos contain different frames. And when we look at each frame in each video, that is how we got these
So
3
it
frames.
got the missing frame from the 20
Right.
to the 30. Or okay, that's what I was trying to figure out what you were explaining. Wow.
Yeah.
So who's got this video?
Well, that's the question. See, and the thing that makes this such compelling evidence to me is that I realize this is all confusing stuff that I'm talking about, but it's important for people to understand. Going back to the iPhone, certainly maybe even 11, 12, or 13, you could shoot 240 frames per second slow motion stuff. If anybody's doing skateboarding videos or
That was
sports
like
videos,
years ago when you could do that, at least I think.
a few years ago, exactly right. So it's not like some kind of exotic piece of equipment. I mean, at one point it was 240 frame per second high-speed photography 10, 15, 20 years ago was very, very expensive deal. But now almost everybody has it in their pocket. You might need to download
You
a
gotta check the
$14 app.
Yeah.
Yeah, you change the settings. To access the 240 frames, I think you do need, these $9.99 Black Camera app or Blackmagic Camera, or there's a couple different, professional camera apps that you can download. But again, $10, $15, it's not something exotic. And then you can access these high frame rates, full HD, 1920, 1080, 150 megabits per second, 240 frames per second. It's an incredibly high quality photography mode, and it would allow you to capture a video just like that. And then people could, output 20 frames, 30 frames, whatever they want. So I think the person who did it, the point I'm getting at is, even though it's readily accessible, the average person doesn't do it, because you're not going to go record your kid's birthday party at 240 frames per second, because regular speed motion doesn't gain anything from having all these additional frames. It's high speed events. If you go to the gun range, for instance, you might want to record that. If you're recording an explosion for a special effect, you might want to do that. But the average person isn't going to do it because it fills up your whole entire phone. I have a phone with 1 terabyte of memory in it, and it's still a concern. You can't shoot that much 240 frame per second video because it uses so much space on the phone. So the notion that the average person would be sitting there at a Charlie Kirk speaking event, photographing a guy sitting in a chair talking at 240 frames per second, it's just so damning. If I am correct, whoever it is that shot this 240 frame video had to have foreknowledge that he was going to be killed. And it's also the ideal angle to capture this. Again, we're talking about intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. This 240 frame per second video would be a very important document for the reconnaissance of understanding the details of this kill.
So tell us about that. So you're describing a process that you're saying they want to record it and have evidence of the results, or?
I don't know. It's because they want to have evidence. It's because they want to be able to analyze what happened. I mean, what if it misses? What if they want to do this again to someone? What if, it's a military thing. So I don't think they're thinking about, destroy all the evidence. They're thinking we're going to keep the evidence and we're going to have this, huge, first of all, I guess they want to have it to implicate people, like, don't roll over on us or we're going to release this evidence that you recorded the 240 frame video and you're going to go to jail. Or I don't know why. See,
Right.
that's the thing. I can't speak to why. I can guess about why, but I've never been in the military and I've never been involved in an assassination. So I don't know exactly why someone would record this. I can tell you what you would do with this, and it's what I'm doing right now. You would analyze, where did the bullet go? Was a 500 foot per second projectile at this caliber? Did it do what we want? Oh man, that wasn't supposed to come out the front of his neck. Now people have that evidence. So you're trying to tweak it and dial it in so that the next time they do this, they do something else.
And you're
I mean,
right.
that's what
You're
I would
right.
do.
Yeah, it's consistent with military operations. That's why, I mean, a lot of it we don't see, but people say, yeah, that's pretty much everybody's got a cam on them at all times. So why wouldn't they have it in the audience? So let me share something with you because things just got interesting. And I don't know how much you've dug into this, but to me, something bothers me about certain areas of this backdrop. So we got this, basically this underpass because above it is the walkway. And I'm seeing this, and I saw you post it. Somebody else had posted it, but I saw you post it, and I said, interesting. So the area that I think, or I'm trying to gather where you're at now, because now the pushback is, where the heck did they get the shot off, right? But I keep being bothered by this idea that there's this gaps, at least I see throughout the buildings, that there's areas that seem to be holding, I don't know if it's, air conditioning, whatever it is, in between floors. And it seems they're changing these panels. Just when you think these panels are like cement, they seem to be popped off here and they're able to access this panel. And when you see the original video, which I want to show chat what I'm talking about, let me get that pulled up. But in the meantime, comment on what you think is happening here and what you found kind of funny. That on top of this, they've also cleared the grass, and now they have a bunch of pavers that have now covered up the grass where Charlie was killed. And then, of course, everybody talks about those panels in the ground or the underground area. So tell us about this image here and what you're kind of thinking.
Right. Well, so what we're looking at here, it's my understanding, is this sort of tunnel behind Charlie. So in the image that we were just looking at, where the alleged projectile is coming towards his head, to his right, so on the side where Frank Turek was standing, to his right and behind him is that tunnel that you were just showing us there. And, anybody at all could be in there. So just to Charlie's right here, farther away from us, behind him. And, if you look at this, it looks like it's coming. Some people think it's coming from inside the tent. I think it's coming from just
outside. Yeah.
Yeah, outside, behind this guy. And, this guy's standing right in the tunnel, so he didn't turn around or anything. Or if he did, it happened a second later. I don't know. We'd have to look at video to see what this guy does. I don't think he even hears it. So where is that fired from? I don't really know. But you're right. The video or the image that you just showed, where they're removing something from the ceiling there, it's very suspicious. I don't know what's going on there. Why are they replacing ceiling panels? I have this other image from the other side of the tunnel. So here we are now on the back side of this tunnel. To the left of this image is Charlie's tent. I think we can just barely see it right there. That's the tent that Charlie is under. And I'm just wondering, if somebody perched right here, could they get the shot? Because certainly if you fired an air gun from here and you just had the barrel sticking out over here, wouldn't this concrete wall block so much of the sound? And if it was timed precisely with a rifle round in front of you, might that explain why the guy doesn't turn around? If he's startled by a louder sound in front of him, he might not even on a subconscious level, might not connect it with a sound behind him. And I'm not suggesting that this person was the shooter. This is a videographer.
Or
that's his friend or something. But it is strange to me that everybody here is kind of like running out of the stadium for their lives, and this guy decides to perch up here and start taking videos. It's just very odd.
Yeah. So what happens is, I don't know if let me see if I can play this video, because maybe this will give us a better angle, because you're the video guy. So I don't want to, share something that you're like, I already know this. But let's watch this, because this is still a clear video that's posted. And this is him pulling up. And I want you to see something. Already in this shot, we can see the panels, and we see a camera. If you can see right there, that's their camera. So let's I'm gonna play this, and then I want to stop where he's walking underneath the pass. But I'm trying to figure something out. What the heck is this? Is this like part of the video? I don't know like what I'm looking at, but it looks as I forward it here, and I'm gonna pause it in a frame. It looks already. Do you see this being bent or kind of curled down already? You see that kind of panel that's already, what is this? I'm looking at this thinking this is all cement, thinking these are all like pieces, but this is the underpass because he pulls up here and this is where he gets off and starts doing the hats. Let's let this play here.
3, 2, 1, smile.
So that's him taking
Awesome,
a
guys.
picture, and
Thank
then
you.
he walks over with the hats right after. All right, they show the shot him coming through right now. Okay, so that's it right here. Let's lay this out. These panels are obviously something they can pop off and mess with. And when you started to tell me your theory, I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. I don't know if there's an actual, if this is all concrete, if there's gaps, do they run anything under there? But there's certainly a camera there. And there's a ton of cameras that we don't have access to, obviously. But when you come this way, you start to see a real clear picture that these already look like something that can be popped off. And, you know, little items like this, I don't know where the wiring's at. And I started to think, I said, maybe a guy doesn't need to necessarily be perched because even if he's back here, it looks as though this tent would be blocking him.
That's correct. I agree with that.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking they were in this panel right in front of his head. Why were they in these panels? I don't know and how those panels work. And I don't know if anybody's investigated that, but they're obviously not. They got gaps here. So something's going on with this area. I don't know what it's for, but check this out. So right here. So there's obviously a camera. Now when I look at it from this side, I don't see the barrier, the canopy that would block. Now from this angle, I'm seeing much more of a wide open angle because I don't see the canopy here. So you do have quite a bit of an angle. I don't know if it goes all the way back here to the guy back here in the corner, but anywhere in between. And now I'm wondering with all the repairs, all the fixing, the fact that they got cameras mounted here, this would be interesting to see who's behind this area. And I don't know if we're ever going to see any of this stuff. I mean, what are your thoughts so far on what you're seeing on this video that it possibly could be somebody in that area to pull off the shot that you're talking about?
I mean, I think that's definitely the area that it looks like this shot is coming from. So you're exactly right. We don't know the nature of what's going on over there. The fact that they're replacing panels or doing whatever work they're doing on it days after this occurred is at least suspicious. And I mean, I also agree that there's probably a large amount of information about this that we're never going to learn. But, you know, you're pointing out very good and obvious things. I mean, we're looking right at it. How can people deny? I mean, if someone's going to say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, what have I said or what have you just said that isn't empirical evidence that's right in front of our eyes and irrefutable and undeniable?
And this is what's happening. As soon as this started to float, because you're really the one that's putting this up because of the framework that you're capturing on that video and the fact that you have two versions of that video, and you've been able to do that even with Zeb, who I know has his channel. He's talking about this. But up to this point, I heard somebody tell me, "What are you talking about, you moron? That's cement." And then your image came out, and I'm like, "Okay, so what they do? They got a jackhammer into the ceiling, and now all of a sudden it became, what is it? I don't know what's up there. You don't know either. We don't know what's in this campus." And then if you see later here, this is also my question, because I know just from this angle here, we're starting to see a lot about these panels and like what's happening. But even then, I noticed that, you know, when we look at these different angles, I think it catches it here. I'm just going to forward it a little bit it's a front shot of Charlie right here. So what are, you know, these people are asking questions. What are these? What are these areas? And I believe this is where some of the ducts and some of these works. I don't know what this is. I certainly don't think the shot people are talking about this up here, but this
No.
is not a shot from up here. It doesn't even
No.
hit to the right side. So a lot of these things have been debunked. So let's get to this. Now that you've been so generous with your time, where do you think the focus then should be in terms of analyzing evidence? Should this you have a bunch of people watching? What should we be doing? You're the catalyst. You're the expert on the video side. But what is it that you think could apply pressure to help to start to shed some light? Because we obviously have a killer who hasn't officially confessed and who's looking to go to trial, but he doesn't even want to go to trial. His lawyer wants to see all the evidence before they even get there. So what is your advice to the audience watching as to what kind of pressure is it towards politicians? I don't even know if that works. Is it towards news outlets to investigate? Who do we start to share this with outside of just us in communities that still want to know who killed Charlie?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's difficult to answer because I'm not going to advise anybody to put pressure on anyone. And in fact, when we talk about some of these things, social engineering, and when I say that, I'm talking about the type of thing that I allege that Blake is doing, trying to attack a problem. And in this case, I'm the problem in a way that looks like he's doing something benevolent. He's posing as an independent journalist, but what I believe he's actually doing is trying to, as you said, muddy the waters and sort of do away with my legitimate evidence. And so they're very tricky in how they do that. And for that reason, I'm not going to advise that anybody put any pressure on anybody, because then someone will come and say, oh, Jason Goodman is telling people to go harass and to pursue and stalk and do all that. So I'm not going to suggest that people do that. However, I do think it's important to continue to pursue this 240 frame per second video because there's just so much evidence. If people agree, a lot of people are going to look at the same evidence that I look at and come to a different conclusion, and they're free to do that. I'm not here to convince anybody to think anything or do anything. I'm just sharing what I see and trying to articulate it as clearly as I can. And if people agree with me that I've found evidence that a 240 frame per second video was taken, and that it is so anomalous given this event that if someone was taking a 240 frame per second video, they would inherently have to know that something unusual was going to happen. Well, then we need to find the person who is taking that video. And to be clear, I'm not accusing this person in the circle of doing anything. I'm just pointing out that this person appears to have a very high resolution news camera pointed right at whoever is taking the 240 frame per second video.
Yep.
And he appears to have a press pass. Yep. So if you live in Utah and you recognize the news agency that this press pass is from, or if you read the newspaper that perhaps this guy has a photograph in, the best thing to do would be to send me the photograph, leave this guy alone. If someone can just find that photograph, if it's been taken, and we can somehow discern who it is that's standing there, not with a vertical phone, but with a horizontal, probably an iPhone. And I say that not only because of the frame rates, but certain characteristics of light and color. It looks to me like it's taken on an iPhone 14. Yeah. Okay. I think it would be. So if we can find a photo that's taken by this person of the videographer who shot this, that I would like to pursue. Because if we could find that 240 frame per second video or find the individual who shot that video, here's where I'm at, Mauler. If you're at an event, see, Adam Bartholomew, he's a great example. He's a guy I contacted on the phone out of nowhere. And look, that's a little bit of a thing. As you said at the top of our discussion, a cold call to someone, whether it's for sales or asking a woman on a date or whatever, when you cold approach someone to try to present something that they're not prepared, they didn't invite you to talk to them, it's touch and go for a moment. And so when I called Adam Bartholomew, there was a moment that I had to convince him that I was on the level and I wasn't trying to do something to harm him or deceive him or whatever. I didn't know who he was or what his motives in taking that video were, but just through, acting like a normal person, I was able to establish communication with Adam Bartholomew, establish trust that I was a journalist who wanted to investigate this. What I told him made sense and was consistent with his experience and what I wanted to learn. So I feel like if we could find out who this individual was, and again, I'm not telling anyone to
Yeah.
contact this person, even if you know who it is. Let's say, for hypothetical example, I was to contact the person. If I called them up and said, hey, I noticed you were taking a 240 frame per second video a second before Charlie Kirk got shot in the head, I'd like to know what that person would say to that answer, because if they were on the level and on the up and up in what they were doing there, I believe they would behave in a manner similar to Adam Bartholomew. When we got through the awkwardness of an initial cold call, they would understand what I'm asking about and have no reason at all to not provide the original video. Where I would start to become suspicious would be if we identify this person and they say they deleted the video, they don't have the video, it was never recorded at 240 frames per second. And if we start asking them more questions, like I did with Blake, and their specific answers to specific technical questions do not comport with reality, the suspicion on that person would grow. So again, I don't know who did this. I don't know if it was an agency. I don't know if it was a nation state. I don't know who did it, but I'm saying we have evidence here, and my methodology is to continue to pursue the best evidence and see where it takes us.
No, that's fantastic. And all you've done today is honestly provided to us, I think, your approach. We can obviously see that you're not trying to throw out any names or go down to motive or who. You're just saying, I'm a person that has experience and I see some things that I can analyze. And so far, are you, from what I gather though, Jason, just to clear this up, you would want somebody to debunk you tomorrow. This is how much of the pursuit of, and I can totally see that if I said, hey, I got a guy who has same experience or more than you in this, and he says you're totally a whack job, bring it, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
So
I'll come back the second you find that guy. I'll be right back on the show. And I'll add this. It's not about, swagger. If someone shows up and explains something to me that I'm misinterpreting and don't understand, and it makes sense, I will adopt that new information and integrate it into the hypothesis. I'm looking for the best hypothesis here. And just to be clear, I was not personal friends with Charlie Kirk. I think I met him once at an event in 2018, spoke a word or two to him. I have been to a few Turning Point USA events. I think he's a good guy to the extent that I know anything about him.
Right.
I just think it's terrible that he was murdered. And I think that if this is the sophisticated conspiracy that we're talking about, and U.S. Army jets are involved in assassinating citizens, somebody who easily could have been a friend of mine, a business associate, what's to stop them to doing it to any of us? And I mean, this is just one of the most horrendous crimes you can imagine.
Yeah, I think historically speaking, it's going down as, at least in the last century, obviously outside of JFK, the most public and horrendous public execution, but assassination. And because it's political in nature, at least we assume that now based on some of the evidence that we have, it's actually a turning point, pun intended. It's something here that has taken people by, almost like grab them by their shirt and ask them to engage as to what's happening. So, and everybody's now got theories and all of that, but you bring a sound, measured approach. You're not trying to figure out the who and the why. You're trying to say is, what is this? And let me clarify earlier, because the pressure that I meant was simply the diplomatic way of doing things. Because remember, we got through everybody, the truthers out here asking questions. We got Kash Patel to go ahead and turn around quickly and say that, oh, I'm going to investigate every angle. And he started to mention exploding this, extra shooters. He put that out publicly. Now, whether he's going to do that or not, that happened after an outcry that something's not adding up. Now, I'm not confident Kash at all at this point. So to do this, why don't you give us your analysis of, let's say, where you think it's at, and just give us the real without, making any accusations as to, at this point, are you more convinced that this is a high level, not military country you're not naming, but a high level operation? This wasn't some furry clique then. These weren't furries.
Well, I mean, these people that they've presented us with, Twigs, whatever that kid's name is in the pajamas,
Yeah.
and Tyler Robinson. I
Right.
mean, I'm not saying that they aren't involved in any way. They very well may be, but there obviously, to me, are many more people involved. And I don't believe that Tyler Robinson shot a rifle that killed Charlie Kirk. I think there's someone on the roof running away.
Yep.
And there's
Got
something else
something like
actually
that? Yeah.
quite interesting
Yeah.
about those two guys, which is that, you know, yeah, I don't know. The whole furry thing, it's just so bizarre. It almost feels like it's put in front of us meant to be off-putting to certain types of people and just too weird to approach. But didn't they say that the Twigs guy has kind of disappeared? And so I
Yeah.
just took, there's a
Yeah.
limited amount of available images of these guys. So this is the jail photo, or the maybe when he's in court or whatever, of Tyler Robinson. And then this is Twigs without his pajamas. And I mean, again, these are bad quality samples, not enough images. Obviously, we would want much better. But in a general sense, the facial symmetry between these two people, I think if you put this guy in a black hat and sunglasses and a t-shirt, can you really tell on a surveillance video which of these guys is which?
No.
And if this one has disappeared, are we talking about some kind of magic trick? I mean, again, it goes back to my days on set. Sometimes you look at some of these people who are the stunt double for Kevin Sorbo or whoever's in your movie. It doesn't actually look like Kevin Sorbo, but when you get him on camera from the right angle, oh, his shoulders are right, his haircut is right, he's wearing the same outfit. This is how this crap works.
Yep. No, I think that the possibilities are out there, but the fact that we can honestly say it's a lone gunman, there's no conspiracy, meaning other people knew. I think we already have evidence that leaked, and this wasn't through the FBI, that others were anticipating something tragic happening the day. Of course, they positioned another way. So considering what you see, the landscape and where you see this going, and now that it doesn't look like he's going to plead guilty or take a plea bargain, at least not between now until the end of October, which is his first appearance. So, and just humor me here for a second, because I know you don't like to speculate a lot. I can tell that about you. But do you think we're going to see Tyler on October 30th sitting in a courtroom when we get to that date?
Well, look, there's certain things that I don't mind speculating about, and I'll just tell people when I am speculating and versus when I'm citing actual evidence. And, my opinion is we're going to see something essentially like this, where, Jeffrey Epstein is going to install some security cameras in this guy's jail cell. And by the way, this also speaks to my understanding and knowledge of artificial intelligence. I created this image. So when an insurance guy from Texas comes along and tells me what he did with artificial intelligence, I've got a good basis of knowledge to question it. And it's a joke, obviously, but
Right.
I think it's very easy for something like that to be the solution. This kid's in jail. I don't know where the hell he is. I don't know if it's the same kid who was on the roof, a different kid, who knows what. But even if he does show up in trial, they could say, okay, you're going to solitary confinement. And then once he's in there, what's to stop the warden from going there at night, letting him out, putting him in the witness protection program, shooting him, doing whatever? I don't know. It's all this black box stuff that can happen. But there's one more important thing that I want to say, because whoever it is that killed Charlie Kirk, and for whatever reason they did, you think about what motivates people to kill people, crimes of passion, or you want to steal his business or whatever. I mean, this guy was like a $90 million business. I'm sure there's a lot of people around who would kill somebody over less than $90 million. But why don't they shoot him when he's at a restaurant with his wife and there's no security around him and no cameras on him and all this? There's obviously a purpose to doing this in this incredibly elaborate way. And I don't know what that purpose is, but it is so conspicuous that it can't be ignored.
Yeah, people like Wu here say, hey, it's a ritual killing. And I
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I can't rule any of this stuff out. So I would ask this: who is Jason watching nowadays that you even hold? Because I did notice I'm a big critic of people that come out like I'm not as measured as you are. I'm gonna be honest because I've been all over the place. At first, I'm like I'm gonna try my hardest because I supported Trump and regardless hate him or love him and where he's at now, it's like let's go for it. So I'm gonna support Cash. But then within one day, it's like something ain't adding up. And either he's incompetent or like what was it from Casino, the favorite movie where the guy's tampering with at least Robert De Niro catches a person tampering with the casino, the slot machines, and he says either you're too dumb to know that you got or you're in on it. Either way, you're out. And that's my idea with Cash Patel. So he's either too dumb or there's still a deep state element within the feds, the G-men, and they're tripping this up the whole time and on purpose to make them look like idiots, to make us, get us to we're worked up now. And now all we want is answers. So who do you even consider? Today I want you to get this last thing. I want to get your take on, don't you believe the biggest piece of evidence, and again, not video, not sound, that has come out, and particularly from Candace, because I have a lot to say about Candace Owens. Sometimes she can just be out here, speculating, wildly. But she came out with, I think, was one of the biggest pieces of information, an internal memo that nobody's debunked. It's false or fake.
Right.
That Charlie Kirk is essentially saying there's people committing fraud in my company. That's what he's saying to hire Doge. I think that is the biggest piece of info that is legit, that nobody's debunked, that she has come out with. And I think that's huge.
I agree. I saw that today, and I don't particularly have any feelings about Candace Owen. I met her once, and she acted like a famous person. So I don't know, wasn't in love with the way she responded to me, but whatever. I've met a lot of famous people who are busy, and that's how they respond. She's a famous, attractive woman, and I'm not surprised she had no interest in speaking to me. But the point is, I did hear that information, and I said, well, it certainly sounds plausible. And if it's true, now you start to go to motive. And I mean, people have said that this was a $90 million organization, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I've never been in charge of a $90 million organization, but when I was in Hollywood, my company, 21st Century 3D, it never made anywhere near 90 million, but it had some degree of success. And I experienced that. Jealous people around me who wanted to take my technology, who wanted to prevent me from getting on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They saw me on An Amazing Spider-Man and they didn't like that. So the things that people will do, even at, let's say, a 7-figure level, I can't begin to think what happens at 8, 9, once you start getting into billions of dollars. I think there's a lot of people who would kill people for a lot less than $1 million. So I don't know. It definitely sounds like an area that's worthy of investigation. And I think that Candace Owen, irrespective of what my personal opinion from watching her on TV or speaking to her for 5 seconds, I think that she has a big platform. I think she's a very smart person, and nobody's right all the time. Maybe she's going for sensationalism in some of her stories, but on this, I think, look, I met her at a Charlie Kirk event, so I do believe that she was friends with Charlie Kirk.
I agree.
And I think that what she's talking about is plausible. It's not some kind of crazy idea. So it's got to be investigated. And just one last thing to touch on, because you mentioned Cash Patel. And look, I don't know him. And I know that there's a lot of people, like, you go watch a movie about fictional characters and you might have maybe you like Han Solo and you don't like Luke Skywalker or vice versa. And these are obviously fake people who the way that they act in a movie either appeals to your sensibilities or doesn't. And there's a lot of people, whether you're watching football, baseball, people decide, oh, I like this person. Or even before social media, a rock star, a movie star, you meet these people sometimes. And in life, they can be horrible, just rude. Not all, but you never really know somebody. So when somebody watches Dan Bongino on a podcast or Cash Patel, read a book, see him on Joe Rogan, you form some opinion about him. Let's keep that over here in the section of, like, what do you think of Han Solo, or what do you think of, Michael Jordan or something. When you watch him flying through the air, slamming a basketball, he's fantastic. But I'm just saying, Kash Patel, I believe, is a very big problem. And I say that because I've been in this independent journalism thing for coming up on 9 years. And just like I didn't realize the treachery that I would encounter in the 3D cinematography business when people wanted my technology and wanted my jobs, it literally is nothing compared to the treachery here, where if I'm right and this information that I'm bringing forward exposes an operation that involves elements of the U.S. Army, classified information. People might have seen, I get a lot of reaction from Palmer Luckey, who is a billionaire, when I talk about drones, particularly when I started talking about the drones in Butler, PA. I never heard of Anduril before I found that guy, Rafael Eduardo Castro. And even on the phone, I called it Anduville because I was so unfamiliar with it, I screwed up the name of the company.
Yeah,
I found that name because when I looked up Rafael Eduardo Castro on LinkedIn, I saw the company that he worked for. I read some articles about that company, and it said they were working with Anduril to test their equipment. So I looked at Anduril. They're flying drones. This guy's on the police call sheet as the drone operator. And I started saying, were there Anduril drones flying around in Butler, PA? And this billionaire comes out of the woodwork on Twitter, starts saying I'm retarded and I'm, all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, it just seemed weird to me because I could go on to Twitter right now and say, oh man, iPhone 17 is a ripoff and the camera sucks and it's no different than the 16. Would Tim Cook start responding to my tweets like a pissed off high school girlfriend? I don't think so. So the activity from Palmer Luckey was very suspicious. And that's not to say that I have proof or even court-ready evidence that he's involved in any nefarious activity, but he behaves in a way that is certainly suspicious. And so what I'm getting at is if the information that I am bringing out is correct, I'm potentially exposing extremely powerful people. And if they were to be prosecuted for these things, let's just say they'd be motivated to stop me from doing this in a wide variety of ways. And for many years, I've had the sense that Kash Patel is on the side of people who want to motivate those who would stop me. He's not going to solve this, I don't think. And I don't think he's a good choice for the director of the FBI if the function of the FBI is solving crimes and putting criminals in jail.
Yeah. And I appreciate your assessment. I think we can read in between the lines of what you may be saying, but how you've assessed it. Like I said, you're pretty measured, but I think the proof is in the pudding. And we're already seeing 2.5 weeks in, this thing is a mess and it's not getting better. It's getting worse by every passing day. And it's due to, folks like yourself, like you said, being brave and coming out here, and to the almost couple thousand people that are watching us now, even on X, it's being generous. I'm kind of surprised. I thought it was going to get throttled a little bit, considering that you've been some kind of weird activity happening in your account. So this is good. I hope we share it. But I want this though, as we continue to move forward. You blessed us today with your presence, your analysis, your expertise. I'm convinced that you're a man that's looking for truth, but at the same time, I have to assess everything you're saying. So as I'll be watching your channel, there's this handle there, but you also had another handle that you wanted to throw out there too on X, because you feel like these guys are kind of working against you. And that's Jason Goodman, NYC, right? That's the second one.
Right. That's the one.
So then they can reach out to you. He was I dropped a comment because I didn't know your email. So I don't know if you want to give out your email now, in case anybody's watching that has access to this footage that can get it to you. Emails.
Oh, yeah.
Can you go ahead and drop your email? Because I don't have that here.
It's truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org, and people can contact me on X. I'm happy to communicate with any serious person, but please be aware that there's a lot of people who contact me with the intention of fooling me. So as I said, when I first contacted Adam Bartholomew, there's a period where you got to get to know people. And so I'm very cautious with who I communicate with and how. So I do encourage people to reach out to me. Certainly, if you know anything about who shot that 240 frame per second video, I'm very interested in hearing from you.
Yeah, a fantastic way to get a hold of him. I say that because he was responsive, and I say this: God bless you, our audience, your audience. Of course, I already know what you're about just based on this broadcast, but I really do say that I think you're an ally for the truth movement, and I hope we stay connected. And I'll be watching your feed, your channel, to find out where you're going. And if I come across anything, or even something comes my way, I'll plug in and connect with you. But this has honestly been a real pleasure, Jason. All the analysis you've given here today, and chat, you guys gotta admit, if anybody talks to Jason and comes back with Cash Patel sort of face, these are two different people right now. I sense that there's a lot of folks that think that this might slip away, that even under Trump, if people had high hopes, we see this devolving right in front of us, right in front of our eyes every single day. I hope we get to the truth, because I'm not convinced that the furry guy on the rooftop killed Charlie Kirk. That's just me. But
I'm with you on that, Mauler. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate your time as well.
No, thank you, sir. All right, y'all. There he goes, our guy. And we'll say that for now, because we're anxious to see what's next. So follow Jason. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it.